Hey everyone, it's Miguel, the messenger, and today I have a message for you about this concept I've learned in class called altruism. Now, altruism is the basic principle of helping others without expecting anything in return. It's this self-sacrificial love that's selfless, and the person that my textbook attributes or connects altruism with is actually Jesus. So, amazing, right? But I wanted to share a message, and this is in Luke 6, where Jesus basically hits every single check mark when it comes to altruism. This is in Luke 6, verse 32 to 36, and it reads this: "If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful." So I just want to go line by line here to really get at what Jesus is telling us, right? First off, He's telling us to love our enemies. That's the subtitle that is in my Bible to start this off. And love your enemies is already a packed statement, because we receive love from our parents, our significant others, our friends, and we give love to those people. We have no problem with that either, but loving our enemies is something that is a challenging concept, right? Think about an enemy you have right now. Think about a bully. Think about somebody at work that you just don't like, and Jesus telling you to love your enemies. You're probably thinking, "Oh man, like I don't want to love that person," or "This person is unlovable." Right? You may be thinking that about somebody. Well, I want to take you back to some basic knowledge that you probably have as a Christian. Even if you're not a Christian, you probably know this. But Jesus came down to earth. He's the Son of God, God in the flesh. He came down and He died on the cross. Why? For our sins. He is the atoning sacrifice. Without Him, we are not reconciled, connected. To God. We will not be able to get into heaven without what Jesus did, right? And I want to remind you that because we're all sinners, that would make us God's enemies. So what is Jesus telling us here? He's telling us to love our enemies. And He's not saying that as the hypocrite. He's not saying that as somebody who is asking more of you than He is willing to do Himself. No, He loves you, He loves me, and we were His enemies. And if you are questioning whether He does love you, take a look at the cross. Because that right there shows God's love for us. He sent His one and only Son. Jesus went to the cross even though it was difficult. That is that self-sacrificial love of altruism that we were talking about, right? And Jesus is saying in these verses, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you, right? If you're just loving your mom and your dad, what credit is that to you? You're supposed to do that, right? That's expected. Even sinners do that, right? And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? That's expected, right? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you, right? That is expected. To lend money and to expect it back, that's normal, right? What credit is that to you? Sinners are doing that. But Jesus is taking it a step further. He's saying to love your enemies. Do good to them and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. Because, hear me, He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. He was kind to you. He was kind to me by sending His one and only Son to die on the cross for our sins. He loved us so much that he was willing to sacrifice his one and only son. Jesus loved us so much that he was willing to lay his life down for you and for me. And he closes with, be merciful just as your Father is merciful. I think one thing that we need to remember when loving our enemies is to show mercy. And the way that we do that is to remember how we were shown mercy. Okay, because you're going to have a hard time loving your enemy. You're going to have a hard time showing mercy if you don't remember that those things, you have received love, right, even though you were an enemy. You have received mercy even though you were an enemy. And I think if you can remember that, if you can keep that in your heart, that you were God's enemy, and even though you were, God still showed love to you. God still showed mercy to you. God still gave his one and only son for you. If you can remember that, then I think that you can love your enemies. And I think that you can show mercy. So I hope that this message encouraged you to go out there and to love those people you think are unlovable. Because remember, you were maybe unlovable, but God said, no, I love you. And I'm going to give my one and only son for you. And Jesus looked at you and said, you are not unlovable. I love you. And I will go to the cross, even though it's difficult, even though it'll be painful, even though it'll be shameful. And it was one of the worst experiences anybody has ever gone through, right? Even though it will be that, I love you and I'm going to do it for you. So, God bless, and I hope to see you soon.